Hey, this is Hunter Wiley. We are on the Kingdom Business Owner. Today we're talking about marketing, we're talking about branding, and we're talking about equally yoked partnerships on the Kingdom Business Owner. So tune in. You're not going to want to miss this one. All right. We got my good friend, my brother from another mother, my business partner, Mr. Chris Rothenbury on the Kingdom Business Owner podcast, man. Glad to have you here.
I'm going to put that on my business card.
Yeah, for sure.
That's my official title, brother from another mother.
Come on, let's go. Man, super glad to have you on the show. Yeah, man, it feels like so fitting that we're talking about Kingdom Business Entrepreneurship stuff because we run a marketing agency together. And so, yeah, man, for those that don't know who you are, give us like the 60-second overview of who Chris Rothenbury is, what you're about, family. 60 seconds, go.
Okay. Yeah. Friend of Hunter Wiley for like 12 years now, maybe more.
Yeah.
Was the first employee of BBM, so been here for 8 years now almost. Variety of roles from sales to client management to production director to now managing partner and overseeing operations more. So it's been a fun journey. Husband of almost 7 years this summer. Yep. And then 2 kids, 2 and under. So 22-month-old and a 4-month-old. So life is busy, but great and rich. And then, believer now for what I would say about 17 years in terms of when I believe the Lord called me to him. So been a wild journey there in terms of the ups and downs and everything in between. But yeah, I'm almost a Colorado native. I've been here since I was 2. So we're just about there.
Come on. Yeah. You're not really a Nuggets fan or a Broncos fan, so you can't really ever call yourself a native unless you become hardcore fans.
I'm just also not as much of a sports fan.
Valid.
But yeah.
Valid.
So, yeah.
Well, man, glad to have you on the show. Man, I want to just jump right into it. Talk to me about how does marketing and faith play a role in business? Like, does God care about people's marketing? Does God care about like a marketing agency or a construction company that uses us to do their marketing and steward that? Like, talk to us about the intersection of the two.
Yeah, I actually just had a conversation with one of our other team members for an internal podcast about marketing. And it wasn't around faith much, but we were talking about how he was just analyzing how there's always been a rub against marketing from people, but obviously we still do it because it works and you have to get businesses out there. But it is interesting in this age, and I feel like even just historically, good marketing will always just stand out. And so as I think about our faith intersecting with marketing and how these things play together, obviously there's some easy ones. We have certain industries that we just don't think are appropriate to work with. Like there's just some lines that we draw there in terms of convictions. But there's a deeper level in terms of even internally, for team members that maybe aren't walking with Jesus, there is a conviction and a culture we have of wanting to actually market and push things out that are true, good, beautiful, and helpful. So I think there's that we've brought that into our company of that culture of even though we're in what could be a slimy industry, we don't want to do it that way. We want to be intentional, relational, approach these things with conviction. And I think part of that is even just seen in our sales process, having been here since the beginning and watching the evolution of how we vet people we take on. There's an interest obvious whether they can afford us and where their business is ready to scale, but also, are you going to steward this well? If we're marketing for, a concrete company, are you going to do a good job? Or is everybody going to look good out of this? Are you going to be treating people well and with integrity of what you're doing? Or are you just trying to make as much money as you can? So there's a lot of intersections there that I think, again, marketing, especially nowadays with where the digital landscape is at, is just constantly changing and maybe under a hot, scope for a while and maybe it shifts off. But I think within that faith intersection, again, that I feel like that naturally is bled into our company of people who have a high conviction there and want to do things well and stand out and not abuse, let's say, quote unquote, the power we have.
That's good, man. Because you and I both know so many marketing agencies where it can feel really Christianese and it's bad marketing. Like they have the cross in the logo, or they're like, whatever. I mean, it's like one guy with one employee and a bunch of subcontractors or whatever. Yep. And it just is not good.
Right.
And you and I offline have had so many conversations about, man, we want to really do excellent marketing for people because it matters to God.
Yep.
And that feels important that feels important for whoever's listening, whether you have a concrete business and you want to be the best concrete guy in your city or whatever. I think that striving with the right heart posture to be God honoring what you do actually matters. And it's even informed how we make some of our decisions at Beyond Blue is like, we're not outsourcing, all of our work to people and paying them pennies. Like we have our team internal and we pay them really well. And like, we care about that.
Yep.
And so, there's, sometimes where we'll subcontract something out, but like we've made a decision that 98% of the things that we do at Beyond Blue are going to be internal.
Yep.
And we're going to pay our people W-2 salaried well.
Yep.
So anyways, I feel like that honors God, but would you agree?
Yeah. And I had a note on that. You made a couple of good points there I'll touch on as I was preparing for, what we'd be addressing. First one, I had heard a guy say this. I can't remember off the top of my head. So if he ever watches this, sorry. But in he actually gave a concrete example. And to your point about cheesy branding, he said, if you're a Christian business owner who has a concrete company, making that business a Christian business doesn't mean etching a little cross in every driveway you do. What it means is that you go above and beyond. You do the environmental research, local weather research, quality of materials, and you do everything you can to lay the best slab of concrete for a driveway that will last 20 years.
So good.
And, there's an ongoing joke. It's not a question of whether or not concrete will crack, but will more win. But the comment there of you're going above and beyond to make an excellent product that's going to honor God through the quality and integrity of it, and not just some cheesy, I cut the sides down and put a little cross in, but look, there's a little cross there. Jesus, the gospel was preached, right? Totally aligned there. And then I think the other point as well about whether God feels honored through these things, this might tie into one of the questions you had that maybe I'll just jump ahead because there's a good segue about how to bring the kingdom into the business. There was, this probably won't be the first time I reference Eastern Orthodoxy, so just bear with me here. It's my passion project right now. There was a father or priest, his name is Stephen DeYoung, and this was a podcast about something else, but stick with me for this parallel here. He was talking about the uptick in anger when Harry Potter came out among fundamentalist families who said, Satan's going to get into your home through that, and that's how the devil gets in, and you have to be careful about this witchcraft and magic. And he was like, that's nonsense. He's like, the devil already has a foothold in your home. He does not need a book. What he will get through is resentment, unforgiveness, lust, anger, these evil characteristics, the opposite of the fruit of the Spirit. And so I think I've been chewing on that point a lot and how it applies even to business. And to your point, to bring the kingdom to a business, does it mean we just etch a little cross or we pray in the morning or have a verse on our website? Or, and I haven't fleshed this out fully, could it look like, actually paying your people well, honoring where the work is being done, leading with integrity, humility, actually apologizing publicly in front of your team when you've messed up and taking ownership. If you go through the fruits of the Spirit, are you walking in love with your team? Are you showing integrity, loving kindness, faithfulness, gentleness? That to me is, I think, again, I don't want to be shy and I want to be bold with the way we interact with team members, but I wonder if there's an element there of if I'm going to make it a Christian business, there has to be a Bible on the front and a verse in the footer. Maybe, but what if it also looked like worrying about the character and attributes that are being imbued through you, through the business? And that's what I think is something I've seen you do really well over the years, is you're, I think, great at putting your pride and arrogance down and just in front of the whole team saying, hey, I messed up here. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I should have done better. And then I think that then models for everybody else. It's okay to say I messed up and to own it. And also then the expectations that there's immediate reconciliation.
So good.
So there's my word vomit, but that was...
No, man.
Yeah.
That's money. And I think it ties into what we preach at Beyond Blue and to our employees, which is extreme ownership. And we spend so much time talking about I think one of the ways that we can look like Jesus the most is 100% owning the 1% or whatever percentage we messed up. Right. I think that's just it just looks different, man. I mean, it feels different. It looks different. And I think that's important all around. So yeah, that's a great word, man. I'm curious. I don't have this question on here, but it just came to mind as it relates to branding and marketing. What can a business do to glorify God through their branding, if it's not like putting a logo in my logo or putting a cross in my logo, like what is it? What's the thing that they can do to like honor God?
Sure. Hopefully this is a good point to cut. This is definitely sinking on me. Yeah, figured you could just cut it over to the other camera for me. It's funny. Am I twisting it the wrong way?
No, you did it right.
Okay.
I mean, is that might be too?
That's fine. It's starting to sink more. Just being picky.
Sorry about this.
No. Just hold the magic finger. I'm good. Just jumping right into the answer, yeah?
Yep.
Okay.
I'm ready. Hunter, you good?
Good to go.
Okay. Yeah, that's it. That's an interesting one to think through if it doesn't have to be as in your face as a cross. I think an example, and this extends beyond just the visual brand, but what comes to mind is values. We're obviously going through this in our EOS process, and we're challenged by our implementer to not have values that every other company in the world has. And that to me is part of the brand. It is something that sticks you out and makes you unique. And those values should then influence the brand voice and how it's portrayed. And so his joke was, Enron had integrity as one of their values, and that didn't work out so well. So if you're going to have something that vanilla, at least make it a little more rich, right? And so that, I think for us in that process, we challenged it and took them deeper. I won't list them out, but if people want to go look at our values, they can. To me, it felt like those were ways that were not even subtly, but just a way of enriching the kingdom into what we do. And that to me, they are unique to us. They speak to a certain character and value we're looking for in people, and there's no cross in there.
Come on.
But you could look at any of those traits and say, I want a believer to look like this. These are traits that Jesus would have exhibited when he was here on earth. So for me, I think those are layers of that. In terms of, colors and style and some of those things, I think it really should just be unique. Like, think outside the box. Don't be so cookie cutter. I think that's probably a good analogy off the top of my head to the body of Christ, where you have arms and feet and legs and hands and eyes and ears. And, to stand out, you don't have to just put a cross in something. There's other ways where you can truly tap into why you're passionate about this industry or business and let that be reflected through the visuals. But then I think the greater point there is the branding and messaging. And where do I want to see certain aspects of Jesus present in this business? And that's what I'm going to lead with.
It's good, man. It's good. I love that. I think it ties perfectly into the next kind of part of this show, which is how can a kingdom business owner like ourselves or people listening walk more intimately with Jesus in the marketplace? Because I think it looks different for us as business owners to walk with Jesus. What does that look like?
This is my other pre-planned Eastern Orthodoxy reference.
Let's go. Let's rock and roll.
Let me see if I can keep because this is a really rich question. So I'll see if I can keep my thoughts organized. Because I was reflecting on this. The word that came to mind for me was just liturgy. Obviously, you being my friend, you've seen this of something I've particularly been passionate in researching and diving into for several years now. And I think that's misunderstood. Liturgy really is just a rhythm of worship. So every denomination under the sun has a liturgy. It's just a question of what's in it. But I've been a lot more interested in like personal liturgies and rhythms for family and personally and my spiritual life. So I think to that question, for me, I think I was starting with what does it look like when I'm outside the business that then impacts how I show up. So the tie-in there is, Eastern Orthodoxy just has a really rich liturgy. That just as I'm researching and understanding it better, and they really hammer home, which I think is an overarching narrative of your. Well, keep my thoughts organized. There is a great book called "You Are What You Love." Can't think of the author, but it talks about this, where love is actually not just an emotion that comes up and is drawn from the heart in like this Western idea of Cupid's arrow, right?
And passion and zeal and
It's just like this emotion you can't control. Even the Bible says this, it's an act of the will, and that it starts with rhythms. And so this book, You Are What You Love, talks about how your love and affection is grown out of things that are regular rhythms of your life. So you don't love riding your bike because you just have one and it exists, you know everything about the bike. You love riding your bike because you go out and ride it and experience the road or the mountains or whatever it is. So where I bring all this together, because it was even tying in with a family worship book I was reading he was saying kids learn how to worship before they learn what they're worshiping, which I thought was really interesting. And he was talking about this importance primarily of having your kids, whether it's a family worship in the middle throughout the week or at church, having them involved in that, because they may not know what they're raising their hands to. They may not know who they're praying to, but they're seeing these rhythms. And so for me, that's kind of what I was thinking through is, what does that look like in your personal life in terms of like personal liturgies, so that these affections are just a natural rhythm of what you're doing. It's not, you just have to show up and pretend you're joyful or in a good mood, but you actually have a rhythm that's deeper down, that's driving your love and affections. And so when we talk about bringing faith and business into the marketplace and showing up well for your team and exhibiting Christ well, I probably bring the question back to, do you have rhythm set up in your life? Is it a family meal? Is it regular prayer? Are there, just like this is like the Eastern Orthodoxy realm, but regular rhythms and fasting you're doing and other things that are driving these loves and affections so that it's not fake. And when you show up and want to be full of gratefulness, faithfulness, self-control, like these things are already driven in. And I think that's, the word discipline came to me a lot through this as well. And that I think that's just a requirement of a Christian business owner to have a lot of discipline. And we've talked about this where discipline can't just mean you're taking bad things out of your life. You have to actively be planting positive fruit in your life. And an example of that, again, through all these things that I've been looking into, is just like Lent, a season of 40 days of intentionally fasting some things. That's going to be a little hard, but it's going to build character and prepare your heart to celebrate Easter and build discipline. And so that when the decision comes up, whether or not you should take on a questionable client, when the question comes up about what the next move is to whether you want to outsource something or actually bring in a human being, or some of those things are like, even am I available on weekends for emergencies, and what does my Sabbath look like? It's not a question. Those things are already ingrained in you, and there's deep rhythms that it's not even a second thought. So that's I think my closing thought to that. And again, this is for our industry. I realize people elsewhere are going to have to shift this, but for us, it's not a question that we just shouldn't be accessible on weekends, especially for your family Sabbath on Saturday and then Lord's Day on Sundays, or gathering with the body. And that's just something that was a rhythm that was already there. And so it's just an expectation that we want our team to have sustainable rhythms. They should be able to go home and fully be present with their families and enriched there. And again, that's for people who wouldn't claim faith in Jesus, but there's still that rhythm and understanding, because there was, I think, liturgies and disciplines and other pieces that influence that down the stream that was just automatically baked into the business. And so when trials and hardships come, there's already resolve and a rhythm there that's going to have the answer preset or a response ready.
So good, man.
That was probably a lot of rambling, but I think there's just deeper layers there of being a very black and white thinker. I think I've just been challenged more in, it's not so much, if you want to change something, it's not so much just learning about it and knowledge, but actual walking it out and patterns and rhythms in that.
So good, man. Yeah. So good, man. And this isn't like just words you're saying. You really live this out. Like, you're one of the most steadfast dudes I've ever known, and like habits inform your life. And so, man, that's everything you just said feels like it's very integrous, very like whole in the way that you're saying it. So, man, yeah, that's money. And it almost sounds like a little mysticism-y in terms of, it's like, but you're kind of describing a rule of life. Like, here's what a rule of life looks like. And then that overflowing into every other aspect of your life. Like, yeah, man, Sabbath deeply impacts my Monday through Friday. Like, it just does. And so if I don't have Sabbath, I don't have like time with Jesus in the morning, it's going to impact my decisions, how I show up as a leader, all the things. Right. So yeah, man, I feel like that's actually really practical, and yeah, it's right on money. Yeah. Love it. Yep. Man, what are some key principles that kingdom business owners can implement into their businesses? Maybe you've talked a little bit about outside of the business, but what are some key principles that they can inject into the business?
Yeah, I'd probably come back to my earlier point, like the really odd Harry Potter example, and just that parallel there, where to me, and these overarching ideas we have, is if you're looking at principles, absolutely be praying over your company. If there's people that you want to invite into that, great. If you want to make that more publicly facing, you can think through how you best want to do that. But when I'm thinking through principles, I probably just come back to the fruits of the Spirit and be less worried about certain things that are going to wiggle away into the business, and focus more on the character of you and anybody else on your team who is a believer that you know, and calling them even to a higher standard. I think that's what we're called to. That's just the reality of being Christians. It's not easy. You know, we have to be quick to repent and seek reconciliation because we're going to miss the mark. But
It's good.
we still have to know what we're shooting for. And so when I think about those positive virtues and attributes, let's see if I can do it off the top of my head: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness,
Self-control.
faithfulness, self-control, and I'm probably missing, there's a little song there. But all of those, to me, feel like principles. And so
Yeah.
what does it look like to be, practice self-control in your business? Well, you probably can't just go spend money on whatever you want. You need to know what your budget is. You need somebody who can help ring all that in, or you need to work within a flow chart if you have one. You can't just be skirting around people. And then gentleness, it's another one where how are you approaching hard conversations? What are the principles driving that? I slacked you earlier this week, but I saw that in a conversation we had to have that was tough, of just how you navigated it, where you weren't a pushover. You weren't also on the other side of just yelling it in their face. And there was this really gentle balance of, I'm going to own my stuff. Here's where I messed up. Can you help? We're working towards a solution. Can we reconcile this? And just navigating that well. So I think those are the principles I would come back to of, again, for that parallel of not being so worried about Satan infiltrating your business through a Harry Potter book, but probably more through like, you're just really stubborn. Your team has yet to see you apologize and take ownership for something. You're not very humble. You don't know what lanes you're supposed to be in. And so you're constantly micromanaging and hovering over people and not trusting in them. I think those things can speak volumes, on top of also being bold and bringing the kingdom to the business.
Bro,
Obviously,
this
there
fires me up.
has to be a trade-off, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that's a phrase like preach the gospel when necessary, use words. It's a misquote. Doesn't know if it's actually ever existed. And I think it's a misunderstanding. So there should be both. But that feels like a helpful starting place because, again, if people can see leadership and humility and repentance, that to me is going to then drive and continue to open that door for the kingdom to make its way into your business.
Dude, so good. That fires me up. And not to get too preachy, but I think, man, as you were talking, I just had this vision of someone listening to this podcast that takes a lot of pride in the fact that they don't curse at their company, but none of their employees would ever know that they love Jesus because they're angry and they're anxious and they're like, there's some other stuff coming up out of them, especially when things get hard, but they take a lot of the pride in the fact that they don't curse, or they take a lot of pride in the fact that they don't X, Y, and Z within the business. And I'm like, oh man, you're missing the mark if like the legalistic things that you're holding on to as a kingdom business owner are there. Like, yeah, that's great that you don't curse, but if you're angry and you don't like ever, like that your employees wouldn't see Jesus in you, that's a problem, you know?
Right.
So, man, I think that everything you just said like speaks to that in volumes. And again, it's not like us versus you, like that's in my own life too. Like, where am I showing up as a leader where my employees would be like, oof, like, I don't know if that's really Jesus in you.
Right.
So anyways, man, that fruits of the spirit feels like, it seems like something we can just gloss over as kingdom business owners, but man, it has got to be central in how we run our organizations.
Yeah, and a quick note to build on that, just really briefly, to your point, maybe somebody's asking, okay, I feel like I'm walking some of these things out well, where are my shortcomings? You can go the traditional path of a consultant or a coach. Those are great. Another place that's easy to start and free is ask your employees.
Yeah.
This was something we've been rolling out through EOS again, where you take your values and you grade someone with a little rating system of how well they're living those things out. But what we were encouraged to do is do that for the employee and yourself and have them rate you as well. And it's a little daunting and uncomfortable. And I think my encouragement would be it's not going to happen the first time. People have to see that rhythm and trust, so that what I've learned, again, somebody really wise said this, can't remember who, people will often send out like little flares and they'll give you a piece of feedback for improvement and they'll see how you respond that's smaller. And I think what I've heard is that response, maybe it was Mike Mitchell, I'll give him a shout out. He gets the credit for now through his leadership course. They're like doing a little test run so that when the bigger feedback comes later, they know what the response will be. And so I think the lesson was around like regulating how you're taking feedback and not taking it personally and actually sitting with it. And so I think as you bring that example up, if people are curious where the blind spots are, do you have some sort of rhythm or process where people can actually speak into that? It doesn't need to be the whole team. If you have a 50-person company, you could go ask somebody, lower down the ladder, but it's probably the core people that can really speak well and see your personality on display and say, yeah, it's interesting, actually. I think there is a shortcoming here.
So
or
good.
doesn't feel like you're very quick to own when something went wrong or to apologize. And it's going to be uncomfortable. But I think to your point, it's no different than how the church operates. If we want people to be encouraging us and challenging us and edifying us, they don't have to be believers to do that.
Yeah.
They see our blind spots too, and I think it can go a long way if you're willing to ask for that feedback.
So good, man. Yeah, I love that. Here's how we're gonna land the plane here. I think that there's gonna be people listening in that are either thinking about partnerships, are in a partnership, are dreaming about new businesses that will have partners. Let's maybe speak a little bit to like our dynamic as business partners that are equally yoked. Man, what advice would you give to people who are either thinking about partnerships and starting an LLC with other people, or like what advice would you give them as a Kingdom business owner?
Yeah, that's interesting. I might want to hear your takeaway on this as well. Since we've officially been partners for almost a year now, so probably just need some more time there. So I guess I'll give the caveat of like, this could just be some high level pieces. Maybe this isn't for everyone. I think our dynamic works really well because we were doing business together even without me necessarily in a partner level for several years leading up to it. And so there was an understanding of rhythms, routines, personality, communication style. So that's I feel like that's practical to say, even if you're launching a new business with somebody, do you know them really well? Is there underlying relationship and friendship there where you know how to communicate with that person, what their shortcomings are, what yours are, how well you complement each other? So I feel like a practical one of just, I think that's what's one of the reasons that we do this so well. It's just there's many, like 10 plus years of just underlying relationship and friendship there that then built into more actual practical business. And then like you said, it just from our perspective, as we've both said, feels really important that person's aligned with worldview.
Yeah.
I know people do it. It just, from our perspective, it seems really difficult to be involved with someone as a partner for such an important thing and not be aligned in terms of worldview and faith and virtues and values.
Yeah.
Not impossible, but yeah, like you said, there's decisions we make that are driven through a Christian worldview. And that's just the reality of it. Like, we're going to be approaching these things differently, or even our vision of what our company can do and this goal we have for this year to expand and maybe look at a nonprofit angle and love on our community more and have regular rhythms of actually getting out and serving others. Those are all things that, to me, there might be a misalignment on. If you work partner with somebody who is not to offend Americans, because I'm an American, like just a pure blood capitalist who's all about maximum profit and whatever it takes to get there.
Yeah.
There's going to be some conflict there. So, and that's, Christians can live that out. So it's, again, I think it comes back to the relationship. How well do you know this person and their core convictions? And maybe have you seen them go through trials and tribulation and see how they responded to them? And do you know that when they're pressed and really put down, they don't change? They're steadfast in their character and are not wobbling.
That'll preach, man. That's so good.
Probably a lot more there. I think
No,
it's just
good.
limited experience, but yeah, that might be some practical things that are helpful.
No, dude, that's money. And I also would add, if we're talking about being equally yoked with a business partner, you have to think about like what a yoke is. You're like yoking, you're under your neck with someone else's neck, and you're like doing the work together.
Right.
And so, man, when there starts to be a veer in the direction that you're going, even if it's an inch, it can feel really uncomfortable. Because you're literally, your necks are yoked to one another. And so that's why it's so important, man, to like really pray into who is your partner going to be, because it can be a game changer for your business. It's been a game changer for us to be the visionary and integrator at Beyond Blue.
Right.
And we just have worked so well together, mostly because we're aligned with our worldview, but also like we're going in the same direction. Our families are going in the same direction, and like we feel comfortable like to do the work together. Right. So anyways, for those that are thinking about it, are in a yoke situation that's not good. I mean, man, we've had to get out of yoke situations before. Like you got to get out of it, man. If you're not equally yoked with where you're going. So
yeah. And just a brief thought, my encouragement there as well for people would be, okay, they have to be a believer. How much do we have to have in common? I think it's a pretty low bar. Like we have pretty different theologies across different things that are very secondary and tertiary, but we're aligned in who's King and Lord, what he came to do on this earth, what he did. And so those basics that drive. And so I wouldn't be, if people are trying to really parse it out into, do we both have to be like King James Baptists? No, but be aligned on what your mission is and the worldview.
So good. So good.
Yeah.
I love it, man. Well, to close up here, give an encouragement to Kingdom business owners where they need to know, whether it's marketing related, whether it's Kingdom related, like what does the Christian Jesus following entrepreneur need to know from your perspective?
Sure. I will say this humbly as still a young adult, maybe maturing adult. It's probably just this season and what I'm particularly passionate about studying and leaning into, but it really is, I think, a deeper richness with the liturgies and rhythms. And so I think I would challenge someone just to explore that world a little more and ask themselves the rhythms that are dictating their lives. I think fasting is a helpful component of that because you cut something out and start to realize how much it was controlling aspects of your life. And so I'm just giving an example, Jesus preached about not bragging when you're fasting, so I'm not. I'm just giving a practical example here. Deleting all entertainment apps from my phone has been really interesting because you realize when your hand goes to the phone, you're automatically scrolling somewhere or thinking about it a lot and just start to realize how often it's creeping up. And so I think people will be surprised if they lean into that and try and not only fast from and cut out negative things, but like I mentioned, and throwing positive things back in. There's a awesome devotional I've been going through that's now redictating my morning routine in terms of what was before. Wake up, watch a quick YouTube video, and run out to the gym. And now it's starting the day in a very different tone. So I don't know how else to get practical there other than maybe ask for some feedback from people, choose something that is taking a lot of time and try and cut it out for a while, and then replace it with a helpful rhythm that'll grow some fruit. And maybe in the end realize you didn't need whatever that piece was. And that's now dictating the way you show up in your business, the way you're treating people, and maturing you to look more like Christ, which how could that not be a win at the end of the day?
Amen.
Yeah.
Come on, man. Well, my brother from another mother, thanks for being on the show, man. Honored to have you on. And we'll see you next time.
It was a joy. We'll be back.